No, genes don't control your life, your mind controls your life. That your mind acting through a new thing called epigenetic control, a new mechanism by which the environment or the perception of the environment controls our genetics, is what controls our heredity. And all of a sudden it says, well, then it means if you change your mind or your perception, then you change your biology. And the answer is absolutely. So you're a master of your life rather than a victim. And the third one that says, get all the matter you can, take it from the earth, rape the planet, gather it all in your yard because that's a measure of your success. Turns out, no, it's not. And the competition you use to gather all this matter is actually now found to be destructive, because evolution is based on a cooperation. When we look into the biosphere, it's all a balanced, harmonious community except for us, because our belief says it's a struggle. The plants and the animals behind me, they look at it as this is a garden for them. We're the only ones that are out of the garden by a misperception. Since perception controls life and misperceptions can kill you, then you recognize the fundamental misperceptions on which we base our civilization are the destructive elements leading to our extinction. And when the new beliefs come into the public, civilization will take a radical turn and move off into a new situation of thriving and harmony and holism. That's the dimension that we're going to. This is the end of the civilization of the old beliefs and the transition into the new one. It's really interesting when we look at the world right now, it's in crisis, and that really promotes a lot of fear, which then creates a worse situation because then we get into protection, shut ourselves down. So I think we should look at what's really going on in a different understanding. Cells are like people, and you have 50 trillion cells in you, so you have 50 trillion citizens, people inside of you. But imagine you were inside a caterpillar, and you were in there with millions and millions of other cells, and all the cells have jobs: digestion, respiration, muscle cells doing their thing. Everybody's got a job. Caterpillar's growing. Everybody every day at the end of the day go, wow, man, we were working today. This thing is building. The caterpillar's getting bigger and bigger. The economy in that caterpillar's growing. So you as cells inside, you don't see the outside world, you see the inside world of your universe of cells as workers and all that. And you're looking around saying, yeah, system is growing, economy's great, everything's wonderful. Then there's a point where the caterpillar reaches a certain size and things start to slow down. And all of a sudden when things start to slow down, there's like more cells than necessary for the jobs. Cells start getting laid off, actually, what's happened. And many cells in this fear state actually commit suicide, which in biology is called apoptosis. They actually commit suicide because they look around going, oh, this thing's falling apart, everybody's losing their work, it seems like it's coming to an end. And while everybody's in that panic fear, there are other individual cells in there that are not panicked. These other cells, genetically identical, but have a different vision. And they're called imaginal cells. That's the name of them. And these imaginal cells, they're in the midst of all this falling apart of their civilization, are looking and say, there's something better and more beautiful in front of us. They're the ones that create the butterfly. So from the same population that's going down with the caterpillar, many of these imaginal cells, which are the equivalent of cultural creatives, have a new vision for the civilization, saying, wait, restructure this thing. We can restructure this, we can make something far better. What's happening in the world today is the end of the caterpillar. And the imaginal cells are making themselves known with new ideas, new visions, and new ways out, because there is a far better way out. It's not the end at all. And most importantly, it's the young people have to recognize they're the population of imaginal cells, because it's up to them to take what was brought into the civilization and restructure it so that they can build that butterfly civilization that is far more magnificent. So rather than looking at fear, right now, look at this as the moment of opportunity, because there's something so much better on the horizon, but we can only get there by eliminating the structure as it is now, because the structure as it is now is providing for our extinction. Why is the myth perception of genes such a problem? And the answer is, if you buy that genes control you, then you buy yourself as a victim. And as soon as you buy yourself as a victim, you let go of your power in creating life. The new science of epigenetics totally reveals that this is not true, and in fact takes the mind and uses that as the shaper of the physical world. And the third myth perception that is affecting us right now is a Darwinian belief that evolution is based on a struggle for survival, with the fittest being the winners. So that, what does all this lead to? It leads to a belief of materialization, that matter is all there is, that people fight over the matter, because whoever has the most matter wins, according to the Darwinian theory of having the most and being the winner and being the fittest. And it makes a whole world based on competition. And the new science completely undermines that whole thing, because the new science says evolution is based on cooperation. And if you don't cooperate, then the whole thing is lost. What we're seeing right now is, with all the competition of each other destroying each other, wars, competing for material existence, raping the planet and tearing it apart to get some pieces of it to hold in your hands and say you won the game. Every one of those moves is destructive, not just of the planet, but of human civilization, because human civilization will thrive with cooperation and will die with competition. And we're caught up in these three old beliefs, these three old myths, as being truth. And if you operate from these truths, then you end up with the extinction that lies before us.
Nice to see you, Michael.
Good to be here, Gary.
This, I believe, calls into question Darwinian's theory of evolution. Is that correct?
Yes, Gary. Essentially, that theory says that human beings like us have been around for about 100,000 years. And before that, you would have had only ape-man-like creatures. Before that, apes and monkeys. What we found, however, when we looked into the entire history of archaeology, my co-author and I did 8 years of research. We looked at every archaeological discovery that's ever been made, and what we found is that there are hundreds of such discoveries that indicate human beings like ourselves have been around for literally millions of years. You know, we had to do 8 years of research, translate papers from German, Russian.
You referred to, in India, the Vedic literature?
Well, yes. I was saying in the beginning that we do take our inspiration from these ancient Sanskrit writings of India. They're collectively called the Vedas. Among them are the Puranas. Purana is a Sanskrit word. It means history. Now, these histories tell of human civilizations on this planet going back millions of years.
How do we know those are accurate?
Well, that was our question too. Richard Thompson and I, we thought, well, if there's any accuracy to those statements, there must be some factual evidence to back them up. Now, when we looked in the current textbooks, of course, we didn't find any such evidence, but we thought, well, let's look a little bit further. And as I said, that led to an 8-year research program where we investigated every archaeological discovery ever made. And what we found is that, practically speaking, archaeologists and anthropologists have buried almost as much evidence as they've dug up. In other words...
Or perhaps overlooked, cast aside?
Well, yes, cast aside. And there have been some outright cases of suppression where people who have reported such things have had their careers ruined.
We should never, I don't think, be afraid to investigate opposing points of view.
This human person who looked like us, existed millions of years ago, did not evolve from an ape, as we are led to believe in the Darwin theory. Why has this evidence been suppressed, and what kind of evidence have you found to support this?
Well, I'll give you a very good example. Now, one example from historical times is during the California gold rush days, miners were digging tunnels thousands of feet into the sides of mountains. Now, the rock in these mountains is over 10 million years old. So when they were digging these tunnels, they were finding human skeletons, they were finding stone spear points, they were finding mortars and pestles, hundreds of them at dozens of locations. Now, all these were gathered together, reported to the scientific world by J.D. Whitney, who was the state geologist of California. and he published a massive book about them by Harvard University. Harvard University was the publisher. Now, what happened to these artifacts? Why aren't they on display in museums? Why aren't our children taught about them in schools? There was a very powerful anthropologist at the Smithsonian Institution named William H. Holmes, and he said to Whitney, "You, Dr. Whitney, if you had understood the theory of human evolution as we understand it today, you would have hesitated to announce your conclusion, namely that human beings existed millions of years ago, despite the imposing array of facts with which you were confronted." In other words, simply because the facts didn't fit the theory, the facts had to go, and so did Professor Whitney.
But back then I would imagine that they did not have the scientific procedures to identify the exact age of bones and matter that we have today. So can you be confident that this researcher was able to give a time for these bones that were found?
Yes, we checked with the modern geologists about the age of the deposits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these things continue to be discovered today, for example. And a vast amount of evidence showing that human beings like ourselves have been around for millions of years has been systematically suppressed. And I can give you some examples. For example, in 1979, Mary Leakey, who's one of the most famous archaeologists of this century, discovered in Africa completely modern human footprints, no different from the footprints that you or I would make on a beach today. Now, the thing about these footprints is they were found in rock that was dated 3.6 million years old. And that throws out completely any idea of human origins that's current today.
Why would anyone want information like that suppressed? What possible advantage would there be in that?
Well, power, prestige, money, there's a lot riding on it. If even one of the hundreds of cases that we document were found to be true, accepted, that would mean that everything we've been told about human origins and antiquity for the past 150 years is simply not true. And I don't think that the current establishment is ready to admit that.
I think that scientists find it harder in some ways than many other people, you see, than some other people, because there's still a strong commitment, even perhaps partly unconscious, to the old atomistic worldview.
So what you're saying is that science has shown us something that scientists do not want to see.
Well, they become so used to the way of seeing it that they don't want to change it. You see, they feel uncomfortable about changing it, and they feel there's no reason to change it. Many of them, they say, well, we're doing so well now, why should we change it? In one sense, it looks as if we're doing very well, you see, but if you look at the broader view, it looks very dangerous.
In the 1840s, there was a scientific magazine called The Geologist, and it reported that in Macoupin County, Illinois, which is right here in North America, in the United States, a human skeleton, just like ours, had been uncovered in a coal mine, in solid coal, 90 feet deep underneath the ground. Now, Richard Thompson and I were able to discover from the reports exactly where that occurred. And we talked to the Geological Survey of the state of Illinois, and we asked them, well, how old is the coal there? And it turned out it was 300 million years old, which means it's older than the Jurassic, that word that everybody knows now, that refers to the dinosaurs. In other words, it was older than the age of the dinosaurs.
Wow. Okay, so that throws a whole new spin on it.
Yes, indeed it does. And some of the scientists who have read the book have obviously recognized that. For example, William Howells, who is one of the big anthropologists of this century, one of the